Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the programme tonight, in an order which may pave the way for another lengthy Supreme Court hearing, a local court in Varanasi has refused to dismiss the case of 5 Hindu women who want to pray at a shrine inside the Gyanvapi Mosque in Varanasi next to the famous Kashi Viswanath temple. The order will be challenged by members of the Muslim community. Chances are that it will land up in the Supreme Court. What are the implications? By questioning the status of the existing place of worship, some say this may further a majoritarian sense of culture and faith in India, as opposed to respecting coexistence and mutual respect as defined by the Constitution. What's more, some say the 1991 Places of Worship Act will be violated if there is a change in the status quo. Members of the Hindu community who have been petitioners say the 1991 Act will not be affected, since they claim vigorous Hindu prayers were the norm here at Gyanvapi as recently as 1993. That's a new angle and a new twist which has emerged in today's order. Our debate tonight, we're looking at this entire issue. Gyanvapi, the court okays the hearing. Will Varanasi go the Ayodhya way? Is this going to be another lengthy case with far-reaching implications? Joining us now, Parul Khera, a petitioner in the Gyanvapi case. Smita Prakash joins us. Alok Vats, Aryama Sundaram, Sudhindra Bhadoria, Shradan Farasat, and Dr. Shoaib Jamai. Dr. Jamai is chairperson of the India Muslim Foundation. Thank you all very much for being with us. Aryama Sundaram, let me come to you first, and let's move away from the law for a moment, because I suspect the bulk of this conversation will be about the law. In fact, let me put that across to Shradan first. Let's move away from the law for a moment and let's just look at the broader issue here, because some would suggest, and I ask, doesn't such a move essentially challenge the notion of India post 1947, where different religions have coexisted by respecting each other's space and rights and embracing an identity which is defined by our constitutional values, rather than claims made on behalf of a faith which may have numerical strength? So keep the legal part aside. I'm just trying to understand how this changes the way India has been.
Yeah, so I think that's quite true, because you see, one thing is, you have one dispute, which is the Ayodhya dispute. And a lot of us after that, those who did not even agree with the judgment, you accepted it on the principle that, okay, now it's over, it's done with, we had this, we are done with it. It was a long 30-year plus in courts. Before that, it was, and throughout those 30 years, there was politics around it. It's over. Now, if we are going to have multiple repeats of that same saga playing out in different parts of the country, in different contexts, and this is one such context, and it's quite clear that, the intention of people who are, I'm not saying one person here, but generally this approach which is being taken now is not just limited to X or Y place, it's to basically initiate it in respect of as many places as possible. So if you're going to have a continuous repeat of it, obviously, our energies are going to be spent on that, right? As a nation, as a country. A lot of our public debates, and with the fact that we're debating this today as opposed to something else, is also investment of energy.
Yes.
So if this is what we keep on doing all the time repeatedly, I mean, no doubt that these kind of continuous contestations over our history only can lead to further divisiveness in our present day society.
Okay.
Right? So what happened in history should not be a cause of divisiveness today. It should be we should be able to resolve it, and these kind of continuous contestations will lead to that. And therefore, of course, it will lead to a situation where things we thought stood resolved with a constitution in 1950 and independence are actually going to just be contested again and fought over. It's going to be, I just see it as a very long, contested, divisive, unnecessary fight, really speaking, in my view.
Aryama Sundaram, again, let me ask you the broader question. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of the law in just a little while, but as not just a lawyer but as a learned person, I'm asking you this. By allowing a change in the character of Gyanvapi, isn't this giving way to a type of majoritarian politics in India? Ultimately, is this leading us in India to a situation where our basic identity in terms of culture and faith is being altered, where it's my way or the highway, as opposed to us living together and accepting that there are differences?
You know, you cannot divorce the law from this issue, unfortunately. But I'll try to answer you purely on a non-legal platform. You are talking about a departure. I'm afraid that there is no departure. India has had this kind of religious inter-rivalry for generations. It's nothing new. I mean, don't forget that the partition and all that happened during the partition, and we are talking about even at the stage of independence of India. So the question of a religious divide is as old as the world. You've had it in the Crusades, between the Christians and the Muslims during the Crusades. You've had it amongst the Protestants and the Catholics. I mean, religious divide is always there, which is why probably Karl Marx said that religion is the opiate of the masses. The fact of the matter is, once there are religions, there will be a religious divide. In India, we assure secularism. And this is where I think everybody forgets what is really secularism. Secularism is non-involvement of the state in religion. Secularism does not mean that the state protects different religions or state canvasses for any particular religion or protects any religions. Basic secularism means is that all, irrespective of their religion, the state does not see any religious divide.
Right.
Which is why when you have individuals who say they have a right to worship or a right to go to a particular temple or a mosque or otherwise, it becomes basic civil rights and basic claim to a religious worship, and has to be judged as a case in that respect.
Okay.
And that is why I said you cannot really divorce the law completely. But because if you look at the way our country has been over generations, and like I said, the whole world, there have always been religious questions raised. And this is nothing new.
All right.
And when somebody turns around and says, I want to have a right of worship in a place where I have had a right of worship, then the courts are approached, and the courts are courts which have jurisdiction to decide civil issues. And that's what happens. They need not go to court. They could equally go to the streets. They could equally canvass it otherwise. In the Crusades, they went to war. During partition, we had riots.
So the essential point that you're saying is, if you use the word secular, it means it applies for all religions, and therefore there's a sense of equality, and that disputes as far as interfaith issues are concerned have always been there, and they need to be sorted out, and the law needs to do that. That's the job, in a sense, of the law. I take that point. Let me go across to Dr. Shoaib Jamai. And sir, let's look at the law in this particular case. Dr. Jamai, the 1991 Places of Religious Worship Act, and I quote, prohibits conversion of any place of worship and seeks to, again I quote, to provide for the maintenance of the religious character of any place of worship as it existed on the 15th day of August 1947. But sir, the point that is mentioned in the order today is that till 1993, there were vigorous prayers by members of the Hindu community within the Gyanvapi Mosque complex, and therefore the basic character is not being changed. How would you respond to that?
Vishnu, very good evening to all the panelists, my fellow panelists. By this judgment, I am, and the community is not only shocked but baffled, because this kind of judgment will open the gate for systematic dismantling of the judicial process. This kind of judgment will open the Pandora box of the nuisance activity of the Saffron Brigade. Is the communal brigade are trying to create a nation within a nation? This kind of judgment of the lower courts are deemed to be unconstitutional. It is very evident that these petitioners were asking for puja inside the mosque complex. Till 1933, Singar Gauri puja was done outside the mosque complex. So it does not interfere with the faith of the Muslim community or the religious character of a mosque. But this petition of the suit mentability is actually the plea for the puja inside the mosque complex. So this will definitely change the religious character of the mosque.
So, half a second, sir. Let me read out what the judge has said, and then let's analyze this further. This is what the judge in the order said. Sir, one sec. You made your point. No, Dr. Jamai, you made your point. Now, I'm trying to analyze this, sir. This is what the judge said, and I quote, "The plaintiffs are only demanding right to worship at Ma Shringar Gauri and other visible and invisible deities which were being worshipped incessantly till 1993 and after 93 till now once a year under the regulation of the State Authority of UP. Therefore, the Places of Worship Act 91 does not operate as bar on the suit to the plaintiffs. The suit on the plaintiffs is limited and confined to the right of worship as a civil right, fundamental right, as well as customary and religious right. I agree with the counsel for the plaintiffs." This is a new angle, sir. Do you have evidence to suggest that prayers were not incessantly taking place till 1993?
No, even the Muslim wing actually accepted the fact that till 1993 puja was going on in the Singarpuri but outside the mosque complex. There were no interference inside the.
Okay, so that is where you draw a distinction. Okay, I understand that point.
Yes, that's a distinction.
That is the distinction. That is the key distinction.
That's one more point. This is not only about the maintainability of the suit, but they are challenging the work property. Few years ago, when there was a Kashi extension going on, there was a land number 93 and 94 were transferred to the Hindu Paksh in a registered property. If that is not the registered property in the name of, then how did you transfer that to the Hindu?
Okay. Okay, all right. One second, sir. One second, sir. I've got what you're saying, and you're losing your signal. Bring down just half a second. Sir,
and dissolved in the higher court.
No, sir.
Thank you.
If you don't listen to me, we can't carry on. No, I understand what you're saying. I'm trying to bring in other participants. I promise I'll come back to you. Smita, let me go across to you at this stage. Smita, even Mohan Bhagwat recently, I think it was a couple of months back, said that why, and I'm paraphrasing over here, but he said that why do we have to keep looking for a shivling in every place of worship? The point being that this is unending. I mean, archaeologically it's unending. I mean, we can keep digging in our country with our tradition, history, and we will obviously find something or the other of an older civilization. So therefore, where does this end is my question to you.
I think, as the good lawyer pointed out, you can't keep the legal aspect away from this entire story. Now, one panelist said that contestations of history deplete us of energy, and we are debating this right now. We are spending a lot of energy on this, but of course it occurs in countries that have a checkered history. We have a past which saw invasions. We have a past which saw upheavals in society, in religion, in subjugation of one religion by another religion, which came in with invasions. Historically, now if suppose we turn around and say historically this has happened, so let's put it aside. Let's not discuss this. That's not possible, right? Historically, sati existed. Did it mean that it was not contested, that people didn't take to the streets, that laws were not changed? Of course, these disputes will happen in an ancient country like ours. But that having been said, now demands for the changes in the Places of Worship Act will take place, regardless of what the RSS says, VHP says, or the Muslim side says, or the Hindu side says. These are laws which were not made by God. They were made by humans. And we have a history where laws and provisions in laws have been revoked, they've been cancelled, they've been changed. We've seen that happening. So, it is possible that, and there was a clear signal, Vishnu, that after the Ayodhya verdict, you will see, and anybody could read the tea leaves, that claims will be made by the Hindu community on the Kashi Gyanvapi Mosque, on the Mathura temple.
No, but
and
the Babri order, Smita,
who knows, it might go further. It might go into
but the Babri order.
Minar, it might go into.
One sec, Smita, the Babri order was only about that. In fact, in the Babri order, the Supreme Court made a detailed reference to the 91 Places of Worship Act. It said the state has has, by enacting the law, enforced a constitutional commitment and operationalized its constitutional obligations to uphold the equality of all religions and secularism, which is a part of the basic features of the Constitution. They are upholding secularism. Saying that whatever has happened as far as Babri is concerned is one thing. It doesn't affect any other religious site, including Kashi.
But there will be, what I'm trying to say is that there will be groups which will ask for judicial remedy
of course, anybody can ask for anything, and of course a court and a judge, maybe a constitutional bench will go into the merits of that. All I'm trying to say is that if you are making the argument, as you are, Smita, that look, we cannot divorce the law from a particular scenario, then let us look at the 1991 law, which categorically says that the Babri judgment was a one-off, and that we have to ensure that secularism, as has been defined in the Constitution, etc., is maintained. So if we are to stick by that, then what is happening now is illegal. That's the point I'm suggesting.
Look, I get that, but you can't have selective appreciation of acts of parliament. If you are going to appreciate the 1991 Places of Worship Act by the Supreme Court, by the parliament, then accept the CAA also, no? Accept the farm laws. Those were also yanked out. Those were also junked. So laws are man-made. There will be people who will question it. It will go to court. Supreme Court might strike it down, but you can't take it away. You can't divorce the law from this.
Okay, Smita, again, politely disagree. I don't think we can talk about farm laws in this context, or CA, different context, different laws, different circumstances. But okay, let me go across to Mr. Alok Vats. Sir, another quote in the Places of Worship Act, which says that the Places of Worship Act imposes a non-derogable obligation towards enforcing our commitment to secularism under the Indian Constitution. The Act is a legislative instrument designed to protect the secular features of the Indian polity, one of the basic features of the Constitution. Mr. Vats, I'm just reading out from the 19th. Can you hear me, Mr. Vats?
Hello.
All right, 1 second. We'll fix that. Shraddha, let me come to you. Same point. I'm just reading out from what the 1991 Act says. The Act is a legislative instrument designed to protect the secular features of the Indian polity, which is one of the basic features of the Constitution. Shraddha, how is the Babri judgment very categorically said what has happened in Babri is a one-off, and that the basic features, the heart of our polity, needs to be protected? How? Through that book of ours called the Constitution. Therefore, why have this argument?
Yeah, what you read out was a portion of the Babri judgment, in fact, interpreting the Act as the purpose of the Act.
Yes.
And let's see, the purpose of the Act is very clear, that we have layers and layers of history. And let's remember, I mean, some people today think as if history began with Mughal history in India, but India at one time during Ashoka's time was entirely Buddhist. It was substantially Buddhist. It was a Buddhist regime with a huge Buddhist population. Today, Buddhists are, a very small number. So, and there could be claims of those kind of communities. It's a very layered history. It's one after the other after the other. How far do you go back? There is, the Places of Worship Act is religion neutral. It doesn't mention a specific religion, right? It can be any religion versus any other religion. So are we going to all contest over 3,500 years of history? I think the people who are looking at it today very aggressively think as if history began 500 years back. I'm afraid it did not. So it actually, you're going to contest over every archaeological site should be dug up to see if there was a Buddhist temple underneath a Hindu temple. I mean, we can't be doing that today. It's as simple as that. And the Act really understands our history. I think it's very easy to say we have a right to, of course you have a right to, assert your religion today. But do you have a right to fight 4,000 years of history? Each community fighting the other? That this was, and what's our conception of fraternity as a people today? A constitution has given us a meaning of fraternity, that we have to, be as people together. So the Act has a very good purpose. That is, you don't fight over history because that destroys you in the present.
Right.
And and that's the principle which the Supreme Court also explains in the Babri judgment quite well. It pitches it to a level of a non-derogable right. So I don't think we should not be, viewing it very narrowly that today, okay, you have an opportunity, so therefore you get back. I think it's a larger point which the Act makes.
Okay. Let me go across to, in fact, Mr. Bhadoria, who joins us as well. Sir, do you believe that this is going to be another long, lengthy legal battle, perhaps being sorted out only by a constitution bench of the Supreme Court?
Well, as a political commentator, let me say this, that we have to look at this whole issue in an overall perspective and in a holistic manner. There is a legal side and there is one other aspect which many other panelists have spoken about, that we have to also keep in view as to what has happened in the past and how social conflicts are there. Social conflicts not only based on religion, it could be based on race, it could be based on lingual basis, it could be based on caste. So many other factors are also there, and we have seen this in independent India and pre-independent India as well. So therefore, I'm quite sure, as today's judgment is not a final judgment whatsoever, it is that the case is maintainable. Well, case is maintainable, all right. The rule of law is there, the constitution in positions are there, and the parliament has also enacted certain laws. So bearing all this in mind, there will be a debate in the courts by the different parties concerned, but eventually I am quite confident, and I am confident about the spirit of our constitution, the rule of law, democracy, and also in the judiciary. They will decide on merits, and I think that all citizens of this country have from time to time, finally they have agreed to abide by our democratic principles, and even in this case I am quite sure everyone will agree that there will be no ugly situation. People will get a verdict which is acceptable to all and as per law.
Okay. Parul Khera, a petitioner in the Gyanvapi case, joins us. Parul ji, thank you very much for speaking to us. आपके लिए आज एक बड़ा जीत है, पर हमें बताया जा रहा है कि ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट तक जाएगा ये केस. इस पे आपका क्या व्यू है इसमें, कि ये लंबा जाएगा, काफी साल चलेगा?
जी, इससे पहले कि मैं आपके सवाल का जवाब दूं, I just want to quickly make a point here. When you guys were talking about Places of Worship Act, just give me 2 seconds. I'll just state out the section 4 sub clause 1 that says that religion character of a place of worship existing on the 15th August 1947 shall continue to be the same as it existed on that day.
Yes.
So the Lord, the Jyotirling, which is the first Swayambhu Jyotirling, was there on 15th August 1947, and it existed from what we call Anant Kal. We don't know from when it is there. Don't laugh
the
at it.
basic identity in 1947 was of Muslims praying in Gyanvapi, and it was not being an area other than restricted areas in the complex where members of the Hindu community could pray.
यही मैं आपको बोल रही हूँ. आप अंदर जाएंगे, आप तहखाने देखेंगे, तहखाने में अभी. No. I am saying okay. If I can't justify Anant Kal, I can define the जो आपका मस्जिद का जो टाइम है जब मस्जिद बिल्ड हुआ, और जो हमारे आप मेरी बात सुनिए. मैंने मैंने आपको नहीं बोला था. आप पहले मेरी बात सुनिए ना. मैं आपको क्या कह रही हूँ. आप आर्कियोलॉजिकल सर्वे क्यों नहीं
Dr. Jamai, 1 second. Dr. Jamai, 1 second. Go ahead, Parul. Yes.
आप आर्कियोलॉजिकल सर्वे क्यों नहीं होने दे रहे? एएसआई की जांच की हम मांग कर रहे हैं, आपको होने दें. आप उसमें भी विघन डालेंगे. आप तो इसमें भी विघन डाल रहे थे. जब जो स्वयंभू ज्योतिर्लिंग जब हमें मिला है, तब भी इन्होंने वो किया. आप फिर उसके बाद आप खींचते चले गए. आप उसे वर्क एक्ट ले आए, प्लेस ऑफ वर्शिप एक्ट ले आए.
How will you justify Apartiyas Devta in the court of law?
देखिए, आप कैसे
will the court run on the basis of faith or on the basis of constitution?
No, we are see, on the basis of constitution. That's why we have approached court and not we are not on streets right now. हाँ, तो हम वो बता रहे हैं. अगला स्टेप यही है. तो हम
Anant Kal. This is absolutely a rhetoric and irrational relevant to the merit of the case. Please try to understand that this merit of the case is that 1991 places of act actually been challenged. Actually been challenged.
What you are saying right now, let's just bring down tempers over here. The fact of the matter is that this is now going to end up in the High Court and then perhaps in the Supreme Court later on. Let's just keep the peace and ensure that that is maintained in our country at a time when there has been so much communal stress. I'm sorry, Alok Bhatt, we couldn't come across to you, couldn't get that line back. We're out of time on this program. From all of us here, good night.